welcome to a special episode of Imperial Advisor with game designer Brad Andrus.
Hello!
Hey!
Hey, Brad.
So we've got all our guys apart from Justin, who's couldn't make it unfortunately, and Owen's having a few connection issues, but I think hopefully is present in his ghostly spirit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Absolutely.
Cool. So I think we'll just dive straight in. We've got a whole bunch of questions, and some of them Brad can answer, some of them maybe he can't, but we'll just sort of roll with it as we go. So I guess, Brad, kind of just to understand, aside from the game, a bit about you and your background in gaming and kind of how you got to where you are interesting for us. So, what was your sort of education in board and card games that sort of shaped you and your views to date?
Well, oh man, so my education in board and card games probably started when I was like 7 years old. I started playing this game called Magic the Gathering. I don't know if you guys have heard of it.
No. Must be a small game.
Yeah. But played that for a long time, and that was my kind of main push up through college. But picked up board games and other card games along the way. Tried to make a go of that semi-professionally, which I define as like trying to but failing. And stopped going at it hard through college and kind of focused more on my grades, and then got out of college and started working at this place called the Fantasy Flight Games Event Center.
Okay.
Which was actually the building we had before we were at our current location, so just down the street, and worked there for a year and a half, and then LCG designer position opened up, and lo and behold, like 6 years later, here I am.
And so 7 years old is quite young. Was there someone who introduced you in particular to Magic, or what led you to pick it up?
Older brother Steve and I believe his friend Tony were into it.
Yeah.
And my brother's 2 years older than me, and Tony was like 10. So Steve and Tony started getting into Magic just a little bit. I wanted to be cool, so I jumped in and I started playing with them.
Great choice.
But I started doing my own designs and stuff probably when I was like 16. Just making little games for fun.
Yeah.
And just in between games of Magic.
Do you remember any of those fledgling titles?
They were terrible. Oh man, they were awful. No, I definitely don't remember any of them.
Like most first novels, it's best forgotten.
Yeah, no, they were definitely awful, but I definitely made all my friends play them and try them out and suffer through them.
Yeah.
What was your inspiration for those early games?
I remember like seeing Magic cards that I liked and then trying to make whole games based off of them.
Ah, cool.
Interesting. And so how did you initially get in with FFG in that the gaming center?
Well, I just happened to look at their website one day. I was looking for jobs after college, was thinking about grad school, but definitely wanted to take some time off, and happened to stumble upon posting on FFG's website for someone to work in the game center. Mm-hmm. Or excuse me, it was the event center at the time, and just applied. And Tim Huckleberry, who works over in RPGs, he helped on stuff like Baron Munchausen.
Oh yeah,
and Star Wars RPGs. He was at the time in charge of like running the event center before he switched over to RPGs, and he hired me. And then I started the day after I graduated college.
Straight in.
Nice.
And what did you study in college?
Paleontology.
Oh. And if you hadn't gone into game design, would you be on dig sites somewhere exotic?
Or maybe. I consider it, and I enjoyed my time studying, and my honors thesis was a lot of fun. But I just felt it wasn't the best time to be in academia, and really wanted to follow my passion of game design.
Cool.
And to be fair, I mean, L5R is a fossil of the card game collection. So,
Brad, is this by stealth confirming that a Tyrannosaurus Rex clan is on the way? Are we going to see bold new directions?
Would let me, I would definitely put in a Tyrannosaurus Rex clan.
After the Beaver clan, obviously. Beaver clan first.
Yeah. Hold on. And after the Mantis clan, because that has to come back, right?
Yeah, Mantis, whatever.
there's a list,
I
Andy.
remember reading something about a Yoritomo in one of the fictions.
It's okay. Just gloss over it, and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like it never
He's
happened.
pirating or something. I don't know.
We all know ninjas are cooler than pirates anyway. And so what did you work on in those areas? I know you've worked on Call of Cthulhu, LCG, and Conquest. Was there other stuff you sort of worked on before that? Or were they your kind of first big things?
I initially was hired to work on Warhammer Invasion and Call of Cthulhu. So I did that. I designed a couple of the last Call of Cthulhu boxes, and I designed the Hidden Kingdoms, the last Warhammer Invasion box. Then Conquest came up, and I worked on that with Eric Lang and Nate French through that game's whole life. Helped them out on the core set, and then I became lead designer for it, going into the couple cycles and boxes it had. Mm-hmm. Then that whole GW thing happened, and did some work on Destiny for a little bit. I helped on second set of Destiny, so about half that is mine, though Lucas did all the development, so it looked very different from where our initial design was. And then I helped out on the 2-player box for Destiny that just came out. And at the same time, I was working on L5R with Nate and Eric Dahlman, doing a lot of the initial design with Nate and Eric. And like it's so hard, like breaking it apart down now, and like looking at the different things that we did. So I'm just going to say we all kind of did everything.
Yeah. It sounds like it's quite a sort of fluid working environment in terms of, there's, X number of projects going on, and everyone's kind of either, focused wholly on one, but you're kind of pretty aware of everything else that's going on, it seems like, within the design studio.
Yeah, there's so much going on, and we all help each other at the end of the day. Some of us lead directions and pushes for particular designs, but we're all involved. Like, I've done some quest design for Arkham Horror. I designed the Curse of the Rougarou and Carnival of Horror. What do they call them? The little side adventures. I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
They are reassuringly tough, by the way.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure we made those super hard. But Matt Newman did all the development on those, and they came out wonderfully.
And so then with you, Nate, and Eric working on L5R, kind of, did you sort of, was there, so you sort of touched on this a little bit, but was there sort of a way you divided up the work, or do each of you have kind of strengths within your design skills that sort of made sense to sort of focus on different aspects of the game?
And so, like, we all helped contribute to the design. I had a lot of ideas for different mechanics and core systems that we could add in, ways to implement our, like, Mono no Aware idea, which would originally came up. Nate was reading a novel that Kat had lent him, and he came up with the idea of incorporating it, and then I threw a bunch of, like, okay, here's like the first 6 mechanics I could think of, and then among those was, I think, the fate system we ended up with. And so we tossed ideas back and forth, and then Eric was there to help filter our mechanics through a flavor lens. So, like, I really can't like put a stamp on any particular part of the game as being mine, because it's really just such a collaborative process between the three of us, and we all contributed so much to every aspect of the game. Like, it's so hard.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I remember when at the very first launch, I very cynically said it sounds a little bit like the Mono Noire was a really great sort of game mechanic that was found a sort of story rationale for how it sort of fits into the world, but obviously that it was actually the other way around. That
no, we were definitely
concept.
inspired by the setting first before anything else.
And then I heard a little bit of the panel from Gen Con, the design panel, where you talked a little bit about how you worked on each clan to sort of give them an individual flavor, and kind of had almost guest designers sort of input at the start of that process. Could you talk a little bit about sort of how that worked?
Yeah,
it was quite interesting, and I hadn't really heard anything like that before.
So when we first sat down and wanted to start designing our clans, since they are so different, they have different backgrounds, ideologies. We really wanted to make sure, more than anything else, that these clans felt different and played different. That was so integral to our vision. And we came up with the idea that we would bring in someone else. Ask them, especially people that were connected to that clan in some way, that saw themselves as either as a member of that clan or this is how I like to play the game. Mm-hmm. For example, we got Matt Newman, who loves the Phoenix clan, to come, and just a lot of it was just him like sitting down and being like, okay, Matt, what do you find cool about the Phoenix? What kind of things do you feel like they should be able to do in the game? And then he just kind of talked, and we started talking. Okay, that idea, you like that they do this. Okay, how do we turn that into a card? Like, we sat down with Damon Stone and Katrina to do the Scorpion Clan. One of the first things that Katrina said is, she's like, I want a seductive male character, which is what turned into Hero.
Yeah.
And she's like, I want someone that can like bring people in and distract them and bring them away. And like that idea turned into that card.
Yeah.
And she wanted actresses that could that are secretly ninjas, and that turned into a different card. And so there's all these ideas they had of like, I want this type of thing from the setting. And so there was some more mechanical aspects to it too, but like some of our best cards out of those sessions came from, I want to see this type of thing.
Yeah, that's cool. And as Baz was saying, Yoga Hirue, that sort of really came across from the sort of fiction coming out recently, the Garden of Lies stuff about how his mechanics and his sort of flavor fit together quite neatly.
Yeah, he's a really interesting character, and we were super lucky to get Magali to illustrate him.
And did you find then that sort of any of the clans did you kind of get stuck on any of the clans, or find any of them that bit harder to sort of figure out and find their sort of unique place within the mechanics?
And we didn't really. That was the big part of why we felt the bringing in a guest into each of these was so successful. Mm-hmm. Because when you're stuck working on a core and you're trying to make all these different factions diverse, but you all have your own predilections and design paths that you usually like to take, bringing in this other person and just seeing what they were excited about, what they were interested in. And we were pretty careful about trying to match people up with something they had passion for, or a play style that they generally lean toward that we would be able to use. For example, like Danny Schaefer, who does a Game of Thrones, lead design on that. We brought him in for the Crab Clan, and we're like, okay, this is a defensive, sacrificial type of clan, and we know he really likes that play style. And so he kind of like, okay, you need this card, this card, this card, and boom, Crab got done super fast because of his help. Of like, this is the type of playstyle, and these are the types of effects I want to see.
So it kind of sounds like there was quite a breadth of L5R sort of knowledge and understanding within the sort of the wider team. Was that from? We know Eric kind of had some history with the game, and Katarina a little bit in terms of sort of the fiction aspect. Was that also amongst the wider team, or was that just from looking at the old game and playing it and getting a feel for it as part of the process?
It really varied. Some people were very, very into the old IP, like Damon Stone was really into the role-playing game. Mm-hmm. But then we had people like Danny who we just kind of talked about, like, we talked about the clan for 10 minutes, talked about what they were good at, their history, and then kind of set them free to suggest stuff to us. And it was a really interesting and different challenge because, again, you're trying to guide them toward, like, these are cromulent effects for the games. These are the stuff that works. And trying to guide their enthusiasm and passion for these
and
plans and guide them into designs.
And were there kind of ideas or mechanics that sort of came out of those that you really liked or really wanted to work, but just kind of couldn't quite find their way into the game, at least sort of initially?
So one thing we did is we did make a giant mechanics pie of, like, what mechanics do each clan typically get before we went into these meetings. So we had an idea of, like, these are the kinds of effects they can get. And then what we did is we tried to identify 3 deck types for each and every clan that generally the cards should try and fall under. Then we tried to make sure that there was enough cards that we ended up designing for each of these deck types. And again, they're pretty subtle, but enough cards to try and show that there's a couple different strategies in each and every clan. So we gave those to our guest designers, and we're like, okay, here's some, it wasn't just open prairie for them to design in. It was more of, here are the things that we want to see out of the clan, and we think you're a person that can help us get there, and your enthusiasm can really bring us there.
Interesting. And sort of how far ahead are you guys designing, and how does that sort of roll into sort of releases in terms of, do you design at sort of at more of a cycle level and then work out how to sort of incrementally release that, or are you designing release by release? How does that sort of process of sort of working into the future play out for you guys?
We're usually a decent clip ahead of where the game is at right now. I mean, I can't tell you where I'm at,
sure,
but we generally have a long-term plan and an idea of how we want the game to be playing at any particular point in time. And so, I have many cycles down the road already roughly planned, in the sense of I have an idea of what I would like to go in these.
Okay, that's pretty encouraging.
Yes.
And how I want the game to play, how fast I want it, what things I want to be big, what new mechanics I want to bring in at what time, and just a clear sense of where we're going. I don't know if you guys are familiar at all with Conquest, but down the line in Conquest, I wanted eventually elites to be very good, and a preferred playstyle for a lot of different of the factions in that game. And then eventually that was going to go away, and we'd see a different cycling of different things being popular or strong, and the idea would be that things keep on refreshing and staying new and exciting for players, and the same deck that's good today might not be as good in 6 months, and it might be completely irrelevant in another year and a half.
And how do... Sorry, Owen, go on.
Sorry, I played a little bit of Conquest, and I thought the battles were excellent in it, and I could definitely see. Well, it wasn't necessarily L4 influence in it, but it was certainly an idea of the kind of I go, you go action style, where everyone gets an action, then your opponent gets an opportunity to respond, which I think is brilliant in more modern game design because it allows skill to really matter, and not if someone puts together some unstoppable combo. Well, you at least might have a chance to stop it. You might have an action or two in there. Whereas if someone's going, well, it's my turn, so I do this and I do that and I do that and I do this, and now I win. Whereas you've got a lot of opportunity for responsive play if you got kind of that I go, you go system. And I thought it was nice to see the kind of evolution of ideas. Like there were ideas in Conquest that were excellent kind of new ideas, and some of them start to show up a little bit in L5R, and some ideas from Game of Thrones start to show up a little bit in L5R. Just taking kind of the best ideas as you're going along and building kind of a synergy of better and better ideas as time goes on. I think it's really nice to see.
Yeah, and that's definitely present in our designs, especially Nate and I working together again. We have different design philosophies, and where they intersect is where you see our games. And we definitely have a lot of DNA from Conquest in L5R, and there's definitely a lot of DNA from Thrones. And really, we just keep on learning from our games and from our players, and we hope to keep iterating and making each and every game that we make better.
So I've got a question for you. You said that you had this mechanics pie, right? And you're using that pie to figure out who does what and how it's going to work. How did that pie, or how do you see that pie now that players have gotten their hands on the game and the wider audience has gotten their hands on the game?
So far so good. I think we're definitely seeing people recognize some of the clan strengths, their weaknesses, and that's the one big thing I say is when you notice a clan's weakness, it's definitely intentional.
Okay, that's cool.
And clans are supposed to have weaknesses, and that's okay. Yeah. Factions are supposed to have weaknesses, and players should be wary of what their clan's weakness is and try and cover up for it, but it's not 100% possible always to do, and that's by design. If you make one faction just the be all end all faction, there's not really why design other factions then?
Yeah,
very true.
Particularly in a game like L5R, where obviously faction loyalty is a particularly strong thing within the community, and in a way that doesn't exist really in the same way in a lot of other games. We've seen a little bit of that in some of the organized play stuff, but how did you sort of take that on board, or how did that influence some of the decisions along the way?
Well, faction identity was definitely one of our chief concerns, and one of the reasons we went to the elaborate lengths we did to make sure all the factions felt different, because people identify so strongly with these factions that you want them to have a unique experience and be able to pick one that feels right for them. When I sit down and I play Dragon, I'm like, yes, this is the faction for me. This is how I like to play. I like to make my custom big monster creatures and then smack you in the face with them. Like that feels right to me, and it's how I like playing the game the best. But I also love Crab for its defensive tactics. I love Phoenix for its ring shenanigans. It's just the brutality of Lion. There's so many ways I like to play games, and the factions feel so different. And so if I feel like playing, I just want to get giant military and break provinces, then sweet, Lion's right there for me. Yeah. If I want to be tricksy and pull the wool over your eyes, Scorpion's there. Or if I want to be a little more martial about that, Unicorn. Like, I have options, and the playstyle I like best can be something I identify with.
And go on, Andy.
If I haven't rambled too much.
No, not at all. I was going to ask about, obviously you've got so many mechanics in the game. There's going to be some element of asymmetry in terms of what's good, what's not good at a given time in a given environment. How did you approach that in terms of balancing? Because this is a question that comes up for me a lot in my work as a game designer as well. how do you balance this game and the asymmetry in it?
And the answer is very carefully. So it's really looking and thinking of it in more abstract terms than absolute balance. Obviously, you can tell that there's some clans that get almost objectively better cards at certain cost points or different ways than others. And we don't try and do that too much. You saw it a lot more in Conquest, where since cards couldn't be taken by other factions very easily, that I could print a Tau card that did something, and then on the other end of the wheel, we do Dark Eldar, who have a almost similar card, but the Tau one is slightly better because those cards would never cross over. But in L5R, that's a lot like anything in the Dynasty deck isn't going to cross over, but Conflict deck cards are. So it's a lot more about establishing a feeling of tiers. Of you have your couple tier 1 clans, your tier 2 clans, and maybe some tier 3, if that. But the idea is that clans will cycle in and out of those tiers as time goes. And because I think the prospect of balancing 7 clans simultaneously would push our power curve so high that it wouldn't feel right.
Yeah, that sounds really encouraging. That sounds really, really good.
So you're definitely going to see as the game goes that different clans will be in that, have their day in the sun, go back down. But the goal is never to be in a position where a clan is not viable. And it's really important to make sure every clan has at least that base level of, even if I'm thought of as the worst clan, with a good game, I can still beat the best clan. And I think that's where your key is to keeping that balance over so many different factions, is at any point the worst clan, and those are some air quotes in there, can beat the best clan. And so you'll also notice that there are definitely clans that have advantages over other clans. And so that really helps mix up that puzzle, that I might be playing what's thought of as the best clan right now, but it's got a really bad matchup against this other clan. Again, I'm being vague because I don't want to.
Sure.
But making sure that there is foils and counters to different play styles is really important. For example, let's look at, say, Lion, who has a very straightforward and powerful military rush. But if a Lion deck runs into a Crab Clan deck with a really, really powerful defense, then all of a sudden that Lion isn't looking as hot as they would be, say, against Crane, where their military can go pretty unchecked. They're going to have much more uphill battle against the Crab Clan player.
So you sort of mentioned the sort of like long-term vision that you have and how that sort of rolls out. There's sort of the old military proverb of no plan survives first encounter with the enemy, and not that the players are your enemy as a designer, but
they might be.
Yeah,
they kind of
are. Some players are, sure. But how often does something crop up that sort of really catches you off guard in terms of a deck type or cards being used in unexpected ways and sort of throw off that plan?
It happens, and I'm okay with it. It's really a interesting puzzle, and the whole point is for players to break whatever we give them. So, it's a very interesting puzzle to be presented with, because then we get to go into, okay, so how do we fix this mode? Or is it okay? Did the players just find a way to have more fun than we anticipated? And sometimes both of those things are true, sometimes one of them, sometimes none of them. And it's really about curating the health of the game. And that's at the core of it. What's the most important aspect is making sure that there are options, and there isn't, especially in a game that's as we've been talking about, as faction driven as this game is, making sure that I never feel bad about the clan that I like.
Yeah.
And that's really my design goal going forward, is you never feel like let's say I'm a Phoenix clan player and I don't want to play Phoenix because they're not very good, or they don't have a fun or interesting build.
And that's a really difficult challenge for you, isn't it? Because you've stacked everything up. You've got your last 3 sets or however many 100 cards designed, and they're pushing out. And if you spot a new problem cropping up, or it could be a major metagame problem or something that becomes accepted wisdom from the player base, it's difficult for you to correct. Because, it's like, oh, well, yeah, don't worry, guys, there's something coming, but it might be 3 or 4 packs down the line. And it might even just be people become convinced to play a particular way, even if that necessarily isn't, correct. They'll be like, well, we have to play this way. We're all hashtag always bidding one.
Yeah.
As a result, the clans with card draw seem a lot stronger.
I mean, that was a massive difference between day 1 of Gen Con and day 2 of Gen Con. Like 2 days, it was 2 totally different environments.
Yeah, and it's definitely a difficult problem, but we have some wonderful playtesters that help with a lot of that and have done a really good job with balance so far. But touching on the bidding thing, we've had a lot of fun, and we never really came to a consensus which was best for us. So seeing how that evolves over time and which decks, and I feel like my perspective is going to come down to deck by deck, how you're bidding,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to anticipate how your opponent is bidding too. So that's going to really reward knowledge of the meta and the different builds that are out there.
Yeah, even in the sort of relatively few games I've played, it does seem like a little sort of meta game within the game where, it's a lot about knowing your opponent and what they like to bid and what you like to bid and where you are in the game, and manipulating expectations that you've set. I've really enjoyed that aspect as sort of evolved.
Well, good. I'm glad.
So I think something that was kind of interesting that through learning the game, actually the base mechanics are kind of relatively straightforward, but we've seen there is like that sort of high skill cap aspect, and the even sort of the difference between sort of single core and multi-core, and I think a lot of that sort of understanding is really still sort of only just emerging. During development, were there sort of particular sort of play style realizations that really surprised you about how things played and emerged from the sort of base mechanics?
That's a hard one. I'm not sure if there's anything that particularly surprised me.
What a good
I
designer.
can take this question in an interesting direction, because one thing we talked a lot about in designing this game, and kind of inspired by Conquest for this, is there's the strategy in Conquest and how you go about playing it, where you're trying to gain as much as possible from your planets and spend as little as possible in your battles to win those planets, because you want to get as much resources as you can and spend as few as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that principle carries over to how clans play in this game. You want to be winning and breaking conflicts or breaking provinces by as little as possible. Mm-hmm. You want to be right on the money if you can. Anything over that, you're wasting your resources. And it's really hard to wrap your head around how exactly to do that best all the time, especially when you don't know what your opponent has. And that forms the key struggle in the game of how do I do this with the least amount of effort possible. And your opponent's never going to let you know what that is, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's kind of quite interesting, I think, is how the different resources of honor and card advantage and fate advantage and character advantage of guys on the board all sort of interact with one another, and there's a sort of close relationship between all of them in terms of, fate and characters is obviously related to, and fate and cards are related to one another, and cards and honor are obviously related to one another, and how it seems very important to identify where your advantages and where your disadvantages are relative to your opponent at any given time, and understand how you can sort of use the advantages to your advantage, or pivot them into, turning an honor advantage into a card advantage for the next turn, because that's what you're going to need to match up to him in a conflict or something like that. I mean, I think that's the different resources are and how they interact is a really interesting aspect of the design.
And even the rewards for winning can be quite subtle. So, I mean, I've definitely seen conflicts where a player played 3 cards to win the Ring of Earth, not realizing that they just lost an advantage by doing that. And even you can have situations where a player will make a big play and have a very extensive board on one turn, not realizing that any wins that they make during that turn are offset by the poor board they're going to have the next turn. Like, there's so much. So many little details, and it all seems to be incremental. Like, a few of the comments I've seen recently have been talking about how you can't put yourself in a position where you're going to snowball, that you're just going to win from there on. Even if you get a little bit ahead, you have to keep working at every last bit till you finally win.
Yeah, no, we've definitely had situations when we were playtesting where someone was so sure they were going to win, they just spread all their fade out, and then, guess what? You didn't break that final province by 1 strength. Oh no.
Yeah.
Clear board, and they lost the game from it. And so it is all about like how you shift your resources into the places where you need them. And that's going to be the key struggle with the game going forward. And I think the thing that will be the most rewarding to players is figuring out the best way to do that, and reading the game and understanding, I'm going to need cards next turn. Do I accumulate honor now so I can get those cards, or do I get those cards and sacrifice the honor and maybe push myself too low because honor isn't that important because my opponent can't do much about it? Or are they going to be able to surprise me, and am I in trouble if I do that?
Cool. So just kind of moving on, I'm curious to ask a little bit about sort of how Gen Con was for you, because obviously that was kind of the first public outing for the game. Was that pretty much what you expected in terms of how you saw players playing? Was there stuff that caught you off guard, either in terms of what you saw from the play at the tables, or just from the community and the environment and all the rest of the sort of fanfare?
I mean, Gen Con was an incredible experience. Seeing that much just love and support for the game and excitement in the players was just incredibly gratifying. It made the struggle of getting this game done and to all the players worth it. You guys are all amazing, and thank you so much. Seeing people playing it was overwhelming. Also, just having worked on it for so long, and then to have 700 people all playing the game you worked so hard on, like, it, incredible.
Yeah.
In terms of play, it was definitely interesting. You know, we had an inkling of how different clans were going to do that day, but the result was not what we expected. And just seeing the creativity that people were using, even with that one core set, was really, really gratifying.
I really want to know who you expected to win, or what expected outcome you had.
I'm not going to go into that.
For the best.
But it was definitely, it was so neat seeing the different clans and the interactions. I honestly thought the vote was going to go the other way.
Yeah.
But like I was going to be pleased either way. So.
Yeah, and sort of jumping around a little bit, but I thought it was, we've talked a little bit about sort of the history of how that player interaction with sort of fiction has worked, but it seemed like sort of the direction of maybe a little bit more constraints around some of the choices available to players is kind of going to help, I think, both the fiction, I think, for the players from getting sort of rewarding results from it, rather than sort of, I think in the past it could kind of go a bit crazy at times.
Just a tad.
And that's Katrina and OP's big push, and she's doing a fantastic job managing that, and her army of authors to do all these new fictions. So she's doing an incredible job so far. So I'd continue to expect the high level of storytelling you guys have been seeing going forward.
And on that, there's obviously sort of you guys as sort of the design team. There's the Katarina and the fiction story aspect, and then there's organized play. How do we've kind of seen quite a lot of how I guess the fiction and the story are married up, and we've seen the fiction and the design have married up with sort of story prize, and we've seen a little bit about how some of the organized play stuff is sort of working into the mechanics as well, around card rolls and the keeper and seeker only type cards we've seen previewed. How does that sort of work with you guys? Do you sort of have spend a lot of time with organized play trying to figure out how that's gonna work, or where do the ideas come from? Does it come from the design first and organized play implement it, or what's that like?
So design and story are kind of the key two elements, and we have a longer term story plan that we've talked about with Kat. Obviously, stuff can change up where that ends up, but we have a basic idea of story elements. Like they're more like floating ideas than like a fully fledged story that we want to see, and incorporates the room for the different twists and turns that could happen. And that's mostly just a framework so that we can start to plan out our sets going into the future, and like where the overarching narrative will roughly see us. Again, there's tons of flexibility built in, so I can't speak too in detail about what we're doing, because I want there to be plenty of surprises for you guys. But a lot of organized play is dictated by the aspirations of that story, and then a lot of the story elements that we bring in, like Kat will typically give me a list of characters that she'd really like to see in each set, and then I do my best to find spots to put them. But mechanically, I'm in charge of figuring out where we're going there, and so sometimes it'll be a conversation where, this character's pushed off for a bit because mechanically they go so much better in this cycle, or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just making stuff up as examples, but
yeah, sure.
And in the future, I was trying to think of a synonym for day, and I don't think there is one. But like, if there was some sort of day of lightning in the future, you might eventually, work towards something like that.
Who can say?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I literally can't say, because I don't know.
Yeah.
We're really open to where the story ends up and what happens. So we want that player-driven experience to be there.
And then obviously the cycles are quite a big topic, in LCGs, about what's the best way to make that work. And we're seeing sort of, I guess, a few different approaches with some of the different games from FFG, and we've seen just the Netrunner, they're doing the core set re-release, was just announced quite recently, with the sort of revised core set. Is there sort of a current state of thinking about, what the best approach to that is, or is it still kind of you guys experimenting and figuring that out with and obviously it's a much bigger question than just design. There's business and there's marketing and all those other factors. But where is the thinking at the moment from FFG from your perspective?
I can't really speak too much to that. Sorry.
Yeah,
it's a pretty broad question. Yeah.
yeah.
Just not a realm I think I can really speak about.
Okay,
because it's a little beyond my pay grade.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fair enough.
Well, just related to Netrunner, thinking evolved there. There was originally going to be this cycle, and they went through the full cycle, and then said actually that whole system needs a little bit of a modification. So there's clearly, FFG are willing to think about things and be flexible and make the best choice for the game at the right point.
Yes, and I think that's the one thing I can talk about. We want to do what's best for the game. That is always our goal. Best for the game and best for the players is our core objective.
Good.
Yeah.
Can't ask for any better than that.
No. So just running through some of our other questions. Speaking of things you can't talk about, but it's on the list. So is enlightenment as a victory condition? Is that something that players of I guess Dragon and others who liked that idea, is that something they should put to bed, or is that something you kind of have in the back of your mind that maybe in the future down the road you would like to explore it?
You hit the nail on the head when you said I can't really talk about it.
Cool.
Know that we played a lot of the original game, and we strove to take forward as many elements as we could. And we hope to continue showing players a lot of love based from that old game, and showing that we have a great respect for what was done before.
Cool. And so we've had a little bit of a preview of the Tears of Amaterasu Dynasty Pack, which is pretty exciting. And I guess one of the questions sort of we had that was, will a pack sort of have a little mini theme within it, and how much do you expect sort of these sort of smaller packs to sort of shift the metagame? How do you see the impact of the Dynasty packs?
So the Dynasty packs do in fact have mini themes in each and every one. So you guys at home can try and guess what they are when they come out, and you can look through all the cards. But some of the titles might give you a hint. But I definitely expect the game to be slightly shifted in a different place as these packs come out. The Magistrates in particular, I think we've previewed the Swift Magistrate, are going to change up a lot of how players go through conflicts and the way assigning to conflicts goes. Obviously, in the Imperial cycle, you might see, some other Imperial cards or cards that deal with things that are named imperially. Change up how the game's played. So we're really trying to, and really with every cycle, our goal is to push the boundaries about what players think is playable and how they go about playing the game. It's supposed to bring something new. It's a new set of products. So they need to change players' perspectives, or else I don't think they're entirely effective as products.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's very exciting. I'm so excited about the game in 6 months' time, and I haven't even got my core sets yet. So it's good sign. And then also one of the things we saw from that was the Keeper Seeker mechanic, sort of limiting mechanic. How do you see that? Sort of obviously that's kind of particularly in sort of the way the rules are working in organized play, that is gonna limit the card pool, but also I guess sort of extend the card pool in terms of there's cards that maybe people won't play with so much, and then suddenly once rules switch they'll be opened up. What was the thinking around sort of that idea of the Keeper Seeker cards?
Well, player choice is critical to L5R's identity. Ever since its inception, players have made decisions about the story and what happens to the characters they love. And we really wanted to expand that idea and bring it to the metagame. We wanted the meta to be player determined in a way as well. And that's really the whole push behind Keepers and Seekers, is that players get to choose some of the cards that they pick. And we make that a prize. We make that a reward. So players aspire to making that decision.
Yeah. No,
And so we want those Keeper and Seeker cards to be impactful on that meta. And one of the ways they can be is by being clan-oriented cards. And so we want a Keeper Lion deck to feel different than a Seeker Lion deck. And we want players to be in the seat to determine which they feel is the most interesting and fun for the next year. Now, of course, there'll be some stuff that shifts that up a bit, and you guys will get some surprises, but it's really a way to provide excitement and player-driven interaction.
And it really adds a certain amount of complexity to the influence mechanic as well. I'm just looking at Disdainful Remark and Time for War. And for the dragon, depending on whether we go for Keeper or Seeker, if we go Keeper, we'll be able to use Disdainful Remark as an extra defensive card along with Murmota's Fury. But if we go Seeker, we'll be able to get more weapons out of our discard pile with Time of War. So, yeah, I mean, that's more than just having an effect on the crane and the lion. It's also making kind of difficult choices for every other clan as well who would ever splash.
And exactly, the whole point of having a bunch of those cards in the conflict deck, especially the clan-oriented ones, is that because we're not really limiting the card pool that drastically, because even if I don't have Seeker for my clan, say I'm Crane, someone else can still be like, I am a Seeker and I want to play Crane as my secondary faction in order to play that Crane Seeker card. And so it's not like we're really pulling that many cards or that many possibilities out of the pool.
And the other kind of, I guess, sort of really noteworthy card from the preview was our first Shadowlands card, Goblin Sneak.
Oh, yeah.
So that obviously sort of excited a bunch of players, particularly Justin, who just loves corrupting any deck that he can get his hands on. So is that something we might hope to see a little bit more of? Maybe some bigger, meaner Shadowlands residents coming our way?
I mean, it's up to you guys.
Who knows?
See how much corruption you guys let into Rokugan.
Yeah.
Don't leave the choice with us.
Yeah.
It was important to us that we didn't put any Shadowlands in the core set. We wanted to really focus the core on the struggle between clans. But obviously the Shadowlands are a really important element of the story and one we want to feel that's impactful. And so we definitely wanted to put at least some sort of Shadowlands thing in the first cycle.
Cool.
And well, first pack seemed like a good place to do it.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of players are looking forward to seeing that.
So what? Just in relation to that, like as a designer, when you're balancing cards, there's kind of a lot of factors to feed into. But with Shadowlands cards, you also have a subsection of players who will just refuse to play it straight out, no matter how good or how amazing it is. Was that factored in, or how do you kind of get around that or consider it?
It's definitely been considered, and we definitely know that some players will not enjoy that. And you can definitely see, like at Gen Con, one of our tournaments, we were recording how much honor everyone had at the end of the game, and that's going to be a factor in some tournaments for determining prizes. I believe it was one of the determining factors in some of the prizes that's going to be handed out at Worlds this year.
Awesome.
Okay.
because there's the Court of the Dragon clan that's happening this year, so there'll be some dragon-themed prizes at that event because of the results of Gen Con. And so I think there's definitely going to be rewards. And again, I don't want to promise anything.
Absolutely.
But there will be incentive and reasons not to run any Shadowlands cards.
Ooh.
And I guess what was interesting, they had something similar for the Honored event here in London, and Scorpion was the most honorable cat, which is
most honorable clan.
Which is, I know, as a Scorpion clan player, I mean, there was certainly
it's fitting.
Yeah, well, I had a certain bugbear about how honor worked in the old game, and sort of you were this idea that in the new game, you know, honor is a very different sort of beast, and you know, anyone can be the most honorable is great.
Well, you know, and part of it too is, you know, Scorpions don't want to appear dishonorable, and so if they appear honorable, it just means they're doing their job really, really well.
And it doesn't mean that they're that honorable. It just means that their opponent was less honorable.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
Yeah, I think most of the Scorpions in London ended up at about 2 honor, which just was enough to be most honorable compared to their 0 opponent.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've also got a bit of a quick fire lightning round questions for you, Brad, if you're for that.
Lightning round. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me.
No buzzer.
Okay, I think I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So we need some sort of like we're too amateur, but we need like a little like sort of tense music. Yeah, like running in the background. But we'll we'll do that. We can do that in the edit. That's fine. It's fine. Okay. So who is your favorite character?
My favorite you guys haven't seen yet, but in the core set,
feel free to share that if you want.
in the core set, it's probably Kakita Kaisen.
All right. Cool.
All right.
What's your favorite card to splash?
Ooh, I'm doing a great job on the lightning part of the round.
Yeah, super quick, Brad.
This is the bit where you have to parse what's public knowledge and what's not, right?
Shoot. Probably Ancestral Daisho.
What card in the current pool is going to be the most hated card in 6 months' time?
If I had to guess, it's probably Assassination, mostly because no one likes getting their characters blown up.
Yeah,
seems reasonable.
Pretty much hated now too.
Yeah.
Changing tack. What's your favorite board game?
Favorite board game.
Pro tip: make this an FFG game.
That's one's so hard. I have over 200.
Ooh.
Good man.
I've been really enjoying Time Stories lately.
Oh, good answer. Yeah,
very
Time
good
Stories is awesome.
I haven't played that yet, actually.
It's really excellent. Space Cowboys does a wonderful job.
What is your favorite art in the game?
My favorite art in the game. It's that crab card. The 3/3 doesn't bow. Which one?
Borderlands Defender.
Is it?
Yeah, Borderlands Defender. That was actually one of the earliest pieces we had done for the game. Still my favorite.
A classic. Would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Okay, I know the answer to this one. I would rather fight one horse-sized duck because I think it makes a better story.
Dedication to the story. I like it.
More epic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, what am I going to be doing with 100 duck-sized horses? Like, I'm going to be kicking them, obviously, and that just seems mean. And like, I feel like I would feel like a jerk if I did that. But like, if I had some epic battle with one horse-sized duck, I think that makes the better story, and I would feel less bad about it.
Would make for a good story, yeah.
And the theory is you only need to get lucky once against a horse-sized duck. But I still think you lose.
But ducks have hollow bones.
They do, but they're also vicious predators. So it's like, this guy will mess me up.
Yeah, well, I'm actually an amateur bird watcher, so I do love ducks. So,
yep.
Brad has a new dog called Pixel. Would Pixel rather fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
100 duck-sized horses.
Of course he would. She would.
She'd probably not really fight them, but play with them.
Yeah, the duck-sized horse would probably be terrified by the game, but she'd be having a great time.
Yeah.
If it's anything like my cat.
All right, lightning fire.
Yeah, what's the most OP card in the game? Of course, there's no OP cards in the game.
They're all perfectly balanced.
They're all amazing. No. Gosh. This is a hard question. I don't know. Togashi Yokuni, because he can be any other card.
Yeah.
Good answer.
What's your favorite role to play?
In
role card.
I'd say really like Keeper of Void.
Okay.
Should Meishodo be legal in Rokugan?
I mean, I read the story and I was pretty sure people were going to make it illegal. I was a little surprised they didn't, but that's what the players wanted, and that's what we'll do, and we'll tell a great story based on it. Should it be illegal? After seeing Togashi Yokuni's vision about it, I'm going to say probably would have been a better idea, but we'll see.
Justin has been in the Google Doc when the next question is, why are blood speakers the greatest?
Because they talk to blood. No, no, they're really interesting story-wise. Just the idea of this very, very structured and strict society, and then this almost counterculture to that. I think they create a lot of tension and are great for storytelling.
Baz has been in the Google Doc. The next question is, which is the best clan and why is it Dragon?
I'm a big fan of Dragon. I find a lot of their elements to be really intriguing. So best clan, I don't think I could ever answer that question because I love aspects of each and every clan so much. I identify more with Dragon. One, I love the Kitsuki. I love their detective ideology in a society that doesn't normally believe in such things, and that sense of tension there, again, is another great storytelling element. I love Miyamoto duelists. I find the idea of, again, they're just so counter to a lot of what the majority of Rokugan believes in. I'll use two swords. I'll do this practically. I don't need a perfect cut. I just need to win. Like that sentimentality I identify with.
Great. And last question, who's the best player between you, Nate, and Eric?
Not me. I am definitely not the best player. It's kind of a toss-up between Nate and Eric. I'd say it'd probably be a coin flip on any given day of the week. Eric plays the new game more than Nate has a chance to, so I'd probably give the edge to Eric right now.
So you're saying we should have a show match at Worlds, maybe?
Yeah. Exhibition match, Nate versus Eric.
Yeah. I mean, you guys saw the small game that Eric and I did.
Yeah.
And Eric was definitely going to win.
You can see the sort of competitive streak in both you sort of slowly coming out as the game went on. It starts out friendly and then suddenly you want to win.
Hard to beat Eric, but Eric is just a phenomenal card player, and so is Nate. Like they definitely have that technical expertise where I'm a lot more of like I get so distracted by the design and being like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I did this? And then I do that, and then it doesn't work out for me, and I'm like, well.
Awesome. That is our lightning round.
Oh, good.
Excellent.
How'd I do?
Pretty well. I think you got it wrong with the what's the best clan and saying it was dragon. That was.
It's obviously Mantis. Obviously.
Clan.
That went so hard. Like, I just had to take it to a spot of, this is probably the clan I identify most with. But like, Phoenix are also amazing. I love Phoenix. I love Crabs.
Don't say that. Justin.
I love them all, man. Like, they're all
You've got
great.
no favorite child. Is that what you're saying?
Like,
There's child, favorite child.
Children remind me more of me, but I love them all, and they're all so much fun, and they all provide this really unique perspective into this unique world.
Excellent. So that's everything we have for you. Thanks a million for giving up your time. I know we're doing this on a Sunday afternoon where I'm sure you've got better things you'd rather be doing, but I'm
so happy to talk to you guys.
We really appreciate, I mean, not obviously this, but just in general, I think the way you guys have interacted with the community has been really good. I think it's well appreciated amongst players as a whole.
Definitely above and beyond.
Absolutely.
The game isn't anywhere without you guys, so thank you guys so much for your love and passion. We are blown away every day by how much you guys care, and makes us want to make the best game we possibly can for you guys. We want nothing but the best for this community, so thank you guys all for being there.
Great.
Oh, I'm swooning.
Yeah, we only complain because we care.
Oh, we listen, and we want to continue to improve and make the game even better.
You guys are doing an awesome job.
Yeah. Thanks a million. Thanks from me and the guys. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Thanks, Brad.
Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful day.
See you at Worlds.
You too, man.
See you guys at Worlds.